After.
Here we go. Kia ora everyone. Thank you for coming. So the way we're going to format this is I'll run through a bit of a presentation that we've got on the RSLGs. I've had a gallon of water already, so so no, get a bit chesty again. And then and we'll move into some questions. So I'm sure you've got some burning questions. A lot of the time it's just getting a good understanding of what an RSLG is, what the mandate is. Probably want to know what's the difference between an RSLG and a WDC, all these acronyms, but I'll get into it. So, like I said earlier, RSLGs were initially established last year. Well, they were established in an expressway due to COVID to advise the government on what the immediate skills needs would be as a result to COVID. I guess the benefit of it last year was it actually did a lot of myth busting. So there was a high anxiety around having unemployment and no jobs, and having sort of an increased unemployment or people not in employment in New Zealand. But it actually flipped it around. RSLGs were able to provide initial on-the-ground insights saying basically there's actually a massive skills shortage because we've had to turn off our migration tap. And therefore there's no one to do a lot of this really skilled jobs that we've got. What's this led to now is we're actually transitioning into the permanent state of the RSLGs. So what that's going to do is coming around in probably a few months we'll have a permanent RSLG group here in Canterbury made up of, is it 12 people? I should know that off the top of my head, should be asking questions. 12 leaders from the community that represent that represent workers, represent industry, represent employers, and some of the key government agencies that are in the region as well, including local government too. And I guess the key thing is it's not just about Christchurch, it's actually all of Canterbury. So there's all the sub-regions as well, and it's really, really important that all of those voices across employers through workers, across all of the sub-regions, is represented in this group. So like I've said, it's promoting a joined-up approach. So labour market planning at the moment, it's pretty disjointed. There's a lack of coordination. And what happens when you've got a lack of coordination is you're just not as effective in terms of the advice that you're providing and the initiatives that you're delivering. So this is actually joining it all up from a regional approach and a sub-regional approach and actually providing that advice to the government through the likes of the Tertiary Education Commission, immigration, other education agencies, Te Pūkenga, WDCs, and also all of the local agencies as well on what the skills needs are and what some of the initiatives could be sort of undertaken or coordinating those initiatives so they can actually focus on the skills needs. Really important is that they're independent. So the RSLGs, they're regionally based and regionally led, and they're led by the leaders made up of independent people in the community. But equally as important, they're actually supported by the likes of me and Adam and Joe here in Canterbury, and that's the Secretariat, and we're from Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, or MB. And we've also got a National Secretariat as well, which pretty much is that sort of centre pin for us to be able to provide the direct advice to the other government agencies that we need to over time. And like I touched on earlier, the groups have got broad membership, so regional industry leaders, iwi, employers, local government, other agencies, Māori, worker and government representatives as well. So it's really important that there's that strong mix of people there. And they're not just representing their little niche, they're part of the 12, they're representing all of Canterbury. So they're there as leaders, but they're really working together to basically balance the needs and represent the needs of everybody. So what do? Like I said, the initial focus was responding to COVID-19. It's a big thing, we all know about it. And like I said, a lot of the advice was amazing in terms of the myth-busting side of things and actually helping progress and help people move forward. In the longer term, it's all focused on, or not all focus, but a large focus of it will be on the regional workforce plans. So I don't know if you know what a regional workforce plan is, because we haven't really talked about it yet, but basically it's going to be helping project the labour market needs for Canterbury in the short, medium and long term. And so I can't really go into much more detail yet because we haven't started developing these. We haven't even, we're working on the framework for this. And it's not something that's going to be led by me or Adam or anyone in the Secretariat, and it's not going to be sort of led by the Centre either. This is something that is owned by the RSLG, the members, and the people that they represent across the community in relation to the skills needs and the education needs and everything else. So that's a work in progress, and everyone will be engaged in that. The other part of the role for the RSLGs is to influence local activities. So it's influencing schools, like how can different curriculums be tailored, or sort of career support in the schools be tailored and customised for the actual regional needs for Canterbury and the sub-regional needs for all the different parts of Canterbury as well. Because it's all different, you can't make it one size fits all approach, and this really recognises it as well. Same with employers and schools, there's a connectivity up as well. So it's not just about informing or influencing, it's creating those connections as well. Employers, helping them tackle the barriers of their skills needs. Again, as there's a connection up, there's also working with employers to understand not the qualifications that they need, but what the skills they need are. And that can directly result into dialogue between the RSLGs and TEC and other educational providers as well on what actual skills needs there are. The other side of things as well that I've already talked about is informing the national direction. So these groups are key advisors to sort of three agencies really, and that is the TEC, so on what educational, especially tertiary education, and a lot of vocational education in the region, what the needs are and what the skills needs are specifically to Canterbury and the sub-regions. Also to immigration as well, because obviously skills needs are quite often fulfilled through migration, and skilled migrants coming to New Zealand to sort of participate in the workforce. And obviously we've had a pretty big shock to that, which sort of actually means that we're in quite a there's a lot of opportunity for the RSLGs to think about sort of future needs around that. And the other key agency is MSD, so around the welfare. So it's the three agencies that are working together and really recognising that they're the key sort of inputs into driving our sort of skilled and also unskilled labour force. Let's see, what have we got here? So the key outputs. So far the key outputs have been local insights reports. So the groups themselves come up with insights acknowledging what the opportunities and challenges are for the region. A good example of this would be supply chain issues across. It's a global thing, it's actually a national thing, but it's been elevated, showing that actually supply chain issues is having quite a dramatic effect now and in the future on our labour force. Like I say, it's that regional intelligence. And in the future, we'll be looking at the regional workforce plans. That's long-term stuff, and it's going to be big. It's going to help inform government settings around the operational settings. It's also going to help inform and drive local initiatives as well. There's one slide for you to remember, just memorise this one.
Yeah.
No photos. There's a top secret stuff.
Yeah, right. You can kill me later.
I think it is actually, but no one here is good. So this is kind of a simplification of a really complicated map that we've got, talking about the relationships and all the key things that RSLGs do and who they work with. So obviously the key thing is the regional voice and getting the inputs and intelligence from the key stakeholders and partners in the region. So that would be iwi and Māori, workers, employers, providers, and other economic development agencies. But then there's also central government agencies in the regions as well, so getting input from them and getting data, the amount of data. And one thing that I've already seen that has come out of this is just data being shared across from all different agencies, getting shared much more freely now, and it just helps everybody make much better decisions. Then the RSLG basically takes this, turns it into local insights reports now. In the future, it will turn it into a regional workforce plan, and then that will be used, if you follow the line to the end, or go there first to number 3, inform national direction. So that will really identify what the labour market needs are from a skills perspective, what our investments should be in terms of skills development, and what sort of other development opportunities there are. So are there any other sort of central government things that we can be doing to support the skills and industry needs in the region? And then coming back to probably the most important thing, which is why I say to last, and that's influencing local activities. So this is a work in progress, and to be honest, there's no one-size-fits-all model for influencing local activities because each region is different, and it's up to the regional skills leadership group to determine how they go about this and how they drive this. But it's probably the most important thing that they do is working in partnership and help coordinate all of the activities that are happening in the labour market system in the region. Next steps. So we've talked about this already. So far, they're up and running. They're running in an interim basis. So they'll turn into a more permanent state very soon. And we're going through the transition process at the moment. From mid this year, it's only a month away, we'll be rolling into a more permanent state of the RSLGs. Here's some examples, some of the common themes. So I talked about, COVID and the impacts that it's had on our ability to attract migrant workers. This has been hit across all of the regions. So I don't think there's any region in New Zealand out of the 15 RSLGs that has not been affected by this. And it's not just primary sectors, it's construction, healthcare, many other industries that have been affected by this. What are some other key things? An interesting one actually with driver's licensing. So I never really recognised this, but out in different parts of New Zealand, especially regionally isolated areas, it's actually really difficult to get your driver's licence. And not having a driver's licence becomes a real barrier to either getting the skills that you need or participating in the workforce as well. And this is something that came up in the RSLG's insights reports that they do, and it actually helped accelerate some initiatives to support driver's licensing in the regions. So that's one of the amazing benefits already of that. And then bringing about and talking about some of the challenges that are quite common across. Hospitality and tourism was a good one too. And that's not just from not having the customers, but also just having the skilled workforce to be able to actually work in hospitality, especially now that there will be more migrants coming in. As tourists, we're not going to have or potentially don't have the skilled workforce that we need in order to have our tourism operating in the way it usually would. So, there's question time now. Actually, I'll check the time, because I think I'm pretty strict. Yeah, 10 minutes? Sweet, cool, let's go. Questions, this is the most important thing. I've covered off a few things. It's been pretty express. like there's a hell of a lot more that we can go into in RSLGs, and I'd rather pick your brain or you pick my brain, and Adam as well. I'll just introduce Adam Eagleton. He's the Senior Advisor for Canterbury, so part of the Secretariat that looks after the Canterbury RSLG. So here's some starters to get you going, but if you've got any sort of just general questions about RSLGs, yes?
The group is going to comprise of 12, is it 12 in there? So I guess it's going to be quite tricky to get a broad representation of all the industries and parts that work across our local region. My question is, I suppose, if you're looking more for influences rather than doers, or...
Yeah, that's right. I think I'll try to answer your question. You're right. So 12 people. You're never going to cover every industry, and I don't think that was sort of the intent. But I think what it is trying to get a fair representation of people that are workers in the workforce and people that are part of the employers, and also iwi, Māori, and other key unions, other key groups as well. When they come in, they're there because they're leaders and they're leaders in their industries or communities. But when they're actually part of the RSLG, they're really representatives of all of Canterbury and all of the sub-regions, not just the specific niche or industry that they've established their leadership sort of role in.
Could you give me an example of the type of person that you're looking for, not a representative from industry, so to speak, that is a leader within their community that also has a very clear understanding of a broad range of industries? What is the typical type of person who would do this role? And the role is obviously paid, and it's a full-time role, or?
No, so I guess one way of looking at the membership, and it is not a board, but it's sort of, if you were to have a quick glance at it, it would look like a board of a crown entity or something like that. So in terms of the people that are on this, I think it's around 16 hours per month that they're sort of working on this. So it's not a full-time job. They're not doers in terms of, they're not doing the analysis and all of that sort of stuff. It's the things that's what we're providing them. But what their key function is strong leaders in the community, and that they can go out and have engagements and come back to RSLG meetings, come back to us with some insights as well of, what are they hearing from their industry partners, what are they hearing from people that they're engaged with, and we do the back end work, so to speak, taking that information and helping that get articulated in plans and advice. So in terms of the people, it's really people that are leaders in the fields,
Will the membership stay static, or will it be updated to get rid of groupthink or that kind of thing?
I actually don't know the answer to that question, but we'll note it down as something of interest.
So we're currently going through a process at the moment to appoint co-chairs. It's a model where we have one co-chair from the community and an iwi co-chair. They'll be in place in about a month, and then the Secretariat will be working with the co-chairs to sort of look at the model of the group. We have an interim group in place, and some of them may put their hand up to move forward into the permanent group. And they may also look at who else in the community would be a good fit, depending on what the coaches are looking for, what the makeup is. But that will be decided after the coaches get appointed, because that's the reason you're part of their role, deciding on what they want the makeup of that group to look like.
And then is there a review of how the group is working at any point in time?
So appointments are going to be made on a staggered basis over 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. So at no one point will the entire group either come
Or they'll
off.
change?
So there'll be some continuity, but there will be opportunities to look at how the skills are matching up with the requirements. As people come on and off the group, you might find that actually we need a little bit more of an industry voice, or we need more of a union voice. So there will be opportunities to review how that group's looking. Because at the moment we are conscious that we are a bit of a startup,
would you find those?
So they're on the MB website. So, I mean, if you don't want to navigate the MB website, just type in RSLG or Regional Skills Leadership Group, and you can see the membership for all 15 RSLGs.
On the Harder Regional Workforce Planning slide that you put up, you talk about the different agencies and things like that. I'm from New Zealand Trading Enterprise, and I'm quite intrigued that there's no export focus on the sort of volume to value in play that we're really trying to push.
Okay, I haven't got a really a meaningful response to that, but I think that's a really good observation there. And I'll be quite happy to have a chat to you afterwards to talk about that, and I can provide that feedback as well. Yeah, that's cool, thank you.
Sorry, you said there were 16 regions, was that right?
15.
How
Yeah.
many in the South Island?
So South Island there is 5. So there's Marlborough, West Coast, Canterbury, Otago, and Southland, Murihiku.
I come from a trade-based industry. We really struggle to get youngsters or tradesmen people in any form. And we would like to know if you go somewhere, you can get information to tell somebody what were the issues we're having. We've relied on immigration, which is basically red check labor. And now we have no immigration. We're trying to compete with overseas countries that get subsidies and stuff like that. So our company's really quite red line for that. But we need tradesmen, and they've just started out there because no one's trained them for the last 30 years. So how do we get on trying to correct that?
That's a big question, and that's definitely something that's strongly recognised, right? So, and this is something that the RSLG actually talks about every single meeting, and actually on a national basis as well, recognising that trades. It's massive. The government has got initiatives underway to help support that, but beyond helping people, just forcing them into things, I think.
As an example, we've recently, what I don't think just talked about, there's a rural initiative to train more apprentices in the rural regions, and it has government funding behind it, and initially it had 50 places, and members of it have grown that, those 50 filled up straight away. And so the message to send up is, hey, this program's got many people that want to be involved, it just needs more capacity. So that's sort of an example of a member with links into the community knowing that initiative fills up straight away. And it's one of, we'll send a message out that this has got a lot of support. You might find other agents doing the same, and then slowly it builds, these initiatives.
There's not a lot of cohesion with any of that, though. I can say we had Maito come to us a couple of years ago. What their course was not really relevant to what we were doing, so they asked us what we needed in our industry. We gave them some advice, so we found some other companies in New Zealand that were doing the same as us. And then they'll come back with something that's not really relevant to them. So, myself as a tradesman has come through trades and moved up and managed the workshop. It's really frustrating when you speak, they come and ask you, you tell them what you need, and they come back with something different. So that's that leadership thing. Somebody has to stand up and say, well, why are you listening? It's not.
Yeah, it's a good point that you're raising. So I haven't got an answer for you now.
No,
because it's a big gnarly problem. But it'd be good to have a chat to you. Yeah, it'd be good to have a chat to you to get an understanding after this. So we'll catch up.
What specific trade are you in? If you don't mind me asking.
Building buses.
Sorry?
Building buses.
Building buses.
So we compare with countries from overseas who've got government subsidies.
So is that coach making, would you call it? Is there any kind of representation on the RSLG around that sort of area?
Not specifically.
Generally?
But it's, but if
it's
it's,
all trades. I mean, I
but
spent
if
20
it's-
years in the building game, and that was the same.
Right.
25 years ago, when I was doing CITO and told the government, we need to be training $20,000 a year to get up to what we're doing. Over don't know, we're trying to figure out what we're after.
Cool. So I'll catch up with you afterwards because I'd like to connect with you and talk to you about this. So we had a question over here.
How does this group link in with, I guess, if there's industries where school leaders don't go around and or aren't attracted to them because the pay is not enough or it's not seen as a career that they're interested in? How will this group work in with those kind of things and feeding back?
To sort of coordinate that. So I haven't actually got a specific answer to that at the moment, but there is an expectation that they'll play a role in helping the coordination and facilitation of that type of thing. So if there's a pressing skills need and there's people coming out of school that are actually really wanting to get into jobs but they don't know what is there and what to do, if the RSLG can help support a local initiative or even a national initiative that is helping do that, that will be part of the job. But in terms of the actual specific how and why, I can't tell you that because I don't know at the moment, and it's going to be, like Adam was saying earlier, it's different across all regions, so what's happening here is going to be different to Auckland or Murihiku.
And we were just discussing about joining up local initiatives. At the moment, Canterbury's running a pilot program. We have mentors going into schools that have low style to tell them about careers they can go on to achieve as a way to inspire them. And we're sort of tracking those outcomes to see if this pilot program works. And then it'll be about expanding that if it does work, about finding, putting mentors in schools. They wouldn't go to university or they wouldn't go to certain roles. So there is engagement in that, and it's a way of us to say, hey, look, Canterbury's doing this pilot program. It could be something rolling nationally, or we could have increased funding or pick up. So it's about knowing about those initiatives.
So I've just seen someone go wrapped up. So if there's one question, otherwise we can.
I've just got one. The RSLGs seem to be set up to respond to needs in the region. Is there another sort of strand as far as developing other opportunities for the region? Is that part of the strategy of the RSLG? So being proactive as opposed to reactive?
Yeah, so when you say other opportunities, like what do you mean by that?
Developing new industries within the region.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the key mandate is providing the advice and the strategy and the planning in order to fulfil the labour market needs and the skill needs. However, if there's emerging industries that are going to provide significant growth for the region and productivity growth and all of that sort of thing, and there are big opportunities there, their mandate will be to focus on what skills do we need to fulfil that and to grow that. So if there are emerging industries, they're not necessarily there to tell us what the emerging industries are that we should be investing in, but really if they're there, they should be focusing and funneling a lot of the advice around what are the skills that we need for those. Cool, that's it. Thank you for coming. If you've got any questions, if you've got any things you didn't want to ask, just grab either Adam or I.